Hello and welcome to Brada Tales. I'm thrilled you've joined us today for another spine-chilling story. Before we dive into today's digital nightmare, I want to thank you for supporting our channel, where we bring you new stories almost every day. Today's tale explores the terrifying consequences when a desperate father crosses a line for his son's happiness. What happens when the digital world starts bleeding into reality? Make sure you're comfortable. This one might have you looking twice at your gaming console. If you enjoy the story, don't forget to hit subscribe and share with friends who appreciate a good scare. Now let's begin. Music, being a single father, sometimes feels like walking a tightrope over an electrical storm. Every step could send shocks through your system, and no matter how careful you are, you always get zapped. My life had spiraled downward lately, from respected IT specialist to food delivery driver in less than a year. Bills piled up on my kitchen counter like a paper mountain range, and I'd lost count of sleepless nights staring at my cracked ceiling. But there was one perfect light in all the darkness: my son Oliver. He was the kind of kid who could find something positive in anything. He deserved way more than I could give him, yet never complained even when he had every right to. He excelled at school, helped around our small apartment without being asked, and always tried to cheer me up when he caught me sorting the envelopes marked "Final Notice" into increasingly desperate piles. It was just a week before Oliver's 11th birthday when he burst through the door, his face radiant with that pure, unreserved excitement only kids can truly feel. He'd been obsessing over one thing for months: the limited edition Nexus Game Sphere. The Nexus was the newest gaming console taking the world by storm, with its holographic interface and exclusive game library. The one Oliver wanted, the Cosmic Edition, was their premium version, with its deep blue casing embedded with tiny lights that mirrored actual constellations. "Dad, Dad," he exclaimed, practically hovering above the floor with excitement. "Ms. Rivera said I'm getting a special certificate at school for my coding project. You remember what you promised, right?" My heart sank. This was the best, worst-case scenario: to motivate him to excel in his technology class. I'd promised to get him the Nexus Game Sphere Cosmic Edition if he created something exceptional. His grades had been slipping after I lost my tech job, so it was motivation for him to keep pursuing his passion. The catch was that it was the season's hottest electronic device, nearly impossible to find, especially with just a week until his birthday. But now he stood before me with those hopeful eyes, and I couldn't bear to let him down. "Of course, buddy," I said, feeling my chest tighten. "I'll get it for you just like I promised." "You earned it." Oliver spun around and raced to his room to share the news with his collection of robot figures. I remained at the kitchen table, staring at my trembling hands, knowing I had absolutely no idea how to fulfill this promise. The console wasn't just expensive, it was impossible to find. Every store within a 50-mile radius was sold out, and online resellers were charging triple the retail price. I didn't even have enough in my account to cover rent for the month, let alone some overpriced gaming system. But I couldn't break my promise to Oliver. He'd done everything I'd asked of him, and more. I couldn't let him think his hard work meant nothing. That's how I found myself parked outside the Backbite Electronics warehouse at 2 a.m. I checked every retailer within driving distance, and some I knew I couldn't reach, none had stock. I'd even entered sketchy-sounding online raffles with no luck. It wasn't like I'd planned it. Ever since I'd made that promise to Oliver, I'd driven by the warehouse dozens of times during my delivery routes. A sprawling concrete building on the industrial edge of the city, surrounded by chain-link fences topped with barbed wire and illuminated by flickering LED floodlights. Each time I passed, the security seemed minimal, a single guard making rounds every half hour or so. I didn't even have to cut the fence. Some section of it had already been damaged, probably by teenagers looking for a thrill. They must have been young because instead of the fence being pushed inward, it was bent outward, an inefficient way of breaking in. Slipping through the gap, I crept toward the loading dock, my heart pounding so hard I feared it might trigger some kind of biometric alarm. The warehouse smelled of new plastic, cardboard, and that distinct electronic scent of silicone and solder. The air inside was cool, raising goosebumps on my arms as I tiptoed between towering metal shelves lined with boxed products. My pulse thundered in my ears as each step seemed to echo across the cavernous space. Then I stumbled upon something unexpected, a display room. Near the back wall stood several life-sized promotional figures from Digital Reality, the most popular game for the Nexus system. The characters stood silently in a row, their features barely visible in the dim emergency lighting. Neo the Digital Spectre, with his pixelated face and flowing code-like hair, Spark the Electric Sprite, her body seemingly made of crackling energy, and Void the Glitch, whose form seemed to shift and distort even in the stillness. 3 life-sized figures, their vibrant colors muted under the faint glow of emergency exit signs. I hurried past them, ignoring the prickle of unease crawling up my spine. I wasn't there for creepy promotional materials. I was there for Oliver. I finally found the electronics section. Rows of sleek boxes lined the shelves, each containing the latest gadgets that most people in my neighborhood could only dream of owning. The Nexus Game Sphere boxes dominated the central display, with Neo's face prominently featured on most of the packaging. The character's pixelated features formed into an uncanny smile beneath text proclaiming, "Step into reality." On the middle shelf was a lineup of Cosmic Edition consoles. The box was larger than I'd anticipated, with a window showcasing the deep blue console inside, its embedded lights twinkling like actual stars. The holographic display on the front shifted between game characters, while the words Cosmic Edition, Unlimited Possibilities scrolled across in luminescent lettering. I grabbed one and clutched it against my chest, then turned to leave, my heartbeat drowning out my footsteps. The warehouse was deathly silent, except for the occasional electronic hum of security equipment. As I approached the section where I'd seen the promotional figures earlier, I froze. One of them was gone. This meant there were still people working here, moving around promotional materials and products. I would need to be more careful. Neo and Void were still standing there, rigid and unmoving, but Spark was missing. Then I heard a faint shuffling sound, followed by the clatter of something metallic hitting the floor. I ducked behind a shelf, clutching the console box so hard I heard the cardboard creak. The sound grew louder, and my pulse thundered in my ears, drowning out everything else. "Please don't catch me," I repeated in my head like a desperate prayer. I peeked through a gap between two boxes and saw movement in the dim light. Fear swelled in my throat, and I bit my lip to keep from making a sound. Then the figure stepped into view, a young woman in a security uniform, tired and hunched over, muttering to herself as she dragged a toolbox across the floor. She stopped near the display of figures, moving things around as if reorganizing them. I slumped against the shelf behind me, my chest heaving with relief. It was just the security guard doing her job. I stayed crouched, watching her shuffle down the aisle. She didn't seem to be in any hurry, and every scrape of her boots on the concrete floor felt like nails on a chalkboard. I needed to get out. I was committing a crime, and the longer I stayed, the more that reality sank into my bones. I hugged the console tighter and crept toward the far end of the shelf, keeping my movements light and slow. The guard mumbled something about stupid displays always falling apart, and moved to another section of the warehouse. The sound of her toolbox dragging across the floor gave me enough noise cover to slip past unnoticed. Finally, I slipped through the gap in the fence, my legs shaking with adrenaline as I jogged back to my car. The drive home felt surreal. For the first time in months, I wasn't consumed by the dread of unpaid bills and failed job applications. The only thing I could think about was Oliver's face when he'd see the console. After everything he'd done, his hard work and his hopeful eyes, he'd finally have something special to call his own. I didn't feel proud about what I'd done, not exactly. Stealing wasn't something I ever thought I'd do. But life has a way of pushing you past boundaries you once thought unmovable. I'd never been able to give Oliver much, and I'd spent too many nights staring at the ceiling wondering if he secretly resented me for it. But this finally felt like a win. A stolen, guilt-ridden win, but a win nonetheless. When I pulled into the apartment complex parking lot, everything was dark except for the scattered security lights. I stepped inside our unit, careful not to make noise, and placed the console on the kitchen table. The next morning, Oliver would wake up to the best early birthday surprise of his life. I could already hear his excited laughter, imagining his face light up as he unwrapped his dream gift. Smiling to myself, I headed to bed. The exhaustion hit me like a digital crash, and before I knew it, I was out cold. The following morning, I woke earlier than usual, my body aching from the tension of the night before. But a sense of accomplishment settled over me. Today would be a great day. I shuffled into the kitchen, planning to make breakfast before surprising Oliver with his present. But the console wasn't there. My heart skipped a beat as I scanned the room, a million thoughts rushing through my head. My eyes finally landed on it sitting on the living room coffee table, perfectly centered, as if on display. I rubbed my eyes, trying to shake off the lingering fog of sleep. I was exhausted from the previous night, so I probably didn't even remember where I'd put it. I shrugged it off and carried the console to Oliver's room. He was already awake, sitting up in bed and tapping on his old tablet. When he saw me standing in the doorway holding the Nexus, his face transformed with pure joy. "Dad," he shouted, throwing off his covers and scrambling to his feet. "Is that? Did you? How did you?" I couldn't help but laugh. "It's all yours, buddy. You earned it." He took the box from my hands, practically vibrating with excitement as he examined it from every angle. "Oh my God, it's the Cosmic Edition. This is the best day ever." Watching him was like healing balm on my wounded soul. The way he turned the box over and over, reading every detail. The way he hugged it like it was the most precious thing in the universe. I felt like, for once, I'd done something right. "Thanks, Dad," Oliver said, beaming up at me. "You're the best." I ruffled his hair, barely able to stand from the overwhelming emotion. "You're welcome, son. Just don't forget this was because of how hard you worked. I'm proud of you." For a brief moment, the guilt melted away, replaced by something I hadn't felt in a long time: happiness. Oliver was happy, and that was all that mattered. After Oliver got his console, I went back to my delivery job, cycling through the motions of picking up food orders and dropping them off across the city. The guilt of having stolen something and the exhaustion that followed weighed heavily on me. But I kept telling myself it was worth it for my son. By mid-afternoon, I pulled over for a quick break. The November air was chilly as I leaned against my car, checking the next delivery on my phone app. I glanced around the shopping center where I was parked, thinking about what groceries I needed to pick up for dinner when I saw it. Across the parking lot, near the entrance to a coffee shop, stood Neo from Digital Reality. Memories of the warehouse rushed back, but I pushed them aside. It was just someone in a promotional costume, probably advertising the game or the console. The black pixelated suit, with glowing blue circuit patterns, looked identical to the figure I'd seen in the warehouse, down to the distinct cubic head with flickering facial features. I took a deep breath, my heart beating unevenly in my chest. "Weird," I muttered to myself, swiping to accept another delivery order. Neo really was everywhere in marketing these days. Now that I was paying attention, I noticed Digital Reality advertisements plastered across bus stops, billboards, and storefronts. People wearing merchandise, kids talking about it. No wonder Oliver was obsessed with the game. After a few seconds, the costumed person turned and walked away, disappearing around the corner of the building. I shook my head and forced a chuckle as I got back in my car to continue my shift. When I got home that night, Oliver was in the living room playing with his new console. The holographic display projected colorful game environments that seemed to float in the air, while the system's signature atmospheric lighting cast subtle constellation patterns across the ceiling. It was comforting, a reminder of why I'd done what I did. The next morning, I got ready for another day of deliveries, already starting to put the warehouse incident behind me. The morning traffic crawled under a sky smeared with dull clouds. I tried to focus on the road, but everywhere I looked, there was Neo and the Digital Reality crew. Billboards huge, garish advertisements towering over intersections. Neo's pixelated face loomed above the city, his features shifting between expressions in animated displays. One after another, the advertisements lined the streets like digital sentinels, each one more vibrantly colorful than the last. I wondered to myself how I'd never noticed the marketing blitz before. At the bus stop, posters were plastered across the glass shelters, showing Neo and his gang Spark, Void, and others I didn't recognize posing with exaggerated expressions. Some kids waiting for the bus wore digital reality backpacks and carried lunch boxes featuring Neo's unsettling smile. At a red light, I glanced to my right out of habit, and there he was, someone wearing that same Neo costume, standing on the sidewalk no more than 10 feet away. His cubic head with its pixelated features seemed to glitch and shift in the morning light. Blue circuit patterns pulsing across the black bodysuit. He wasn't moving or gesturing like a mascot at a promotion. He was just standing there, facing me, staring. I felt my grip on the steering wheel instinctively tight. The light turned green, and I snapped my gaze forward and pressed on the gas. The car rolled forward, and for a moment, the tension in my shoulders started to ease. I risked a glance in the side mirror and saw Neo still standing there, completely motionless except for his head, which kept tracking my car as it moved. I pressed harder on the gas, the engine groaning as my car sped up. When I looked in the rearview mirror again, he was gone. For a long time, I drove in silence, thinking about what I'd just seen. It had to be a coincidence, some promotional employee in a costume, an overzealous fan trying to get reactions from people. Ordinarily, that would have eased my mind, but after what I did, I couldn't help but dwell on stranger, more unsettling possibilities. The rest of the day dragged on, but I eventually managed to push the strange encounter out of my mind. It was just some marketing person messing with commuters and happened to pick me. That's what I kept telling myself, repeating it like a mantra to keep the unease at bay. By the time my shift ended, the winter sun had already dropped below the horizon, casting the streets in early darkness. The air was sharp as I walked to my car, my breath misting in front of me. The parking lot was mostly empty, just a few scattered cars under the flickering overhead lights. I pulled out of the lot, heading down the narrow, mostly abandoned industrial roads that shaved a few minutes off my drive home. The darkness pressed against the car windows, the street lights few and far between. About halfway through the drive, I saw something up ahead, something standing in the middle of the road. I slowed the car, my stomach tightening as the shape came into clear focus. It was Neo. The costume was unmistakable, but something was different. I couldn't pinpoint it at first, but then I realized he wasn't standing still. Neo's limbs were twitching and spasming, jerking in sharp, jittery motions. His cubic head glitched violently to the side, snapping back upright a moment later. His gaze wasn't fixed on me. It stared off to the side of the road. It was like watching a character in a video game with corrupted animation. A series of unnatural movements that made my skin crawl. My car slowed to a crawl as I stared ahead, my mind scrambling for an explanation, but nothing made sense. As I sat frozen, Neo's spasms momentarily stopped. He stood perfectly still. Then, In one horrifyingly fluid motion, he dropped into a strange digital crouch and snapped his head in my direction. The face on his cubic head pixelated, reformed, and settled into what looked like a hunting expression. The blood drained from my body as he started moving toward me, his body distorting unnaturally as he accelerated into a zigzagging run. I punched the gas pedal, the tires screeching as the car surged forward. My mind screamed as I gripped the wheel, eyes locked ahead. I swerved just past the thing, narrowly avoiding veering off the road. I stole a glance in the rearview mirror and realized Neo was still chasing me, his form illuminated by the red glow of my taillights, movement glitching like a character with broken physics. I checked ahead, making sure I wasn't about to rear-end someone at full speed. When I looked back again, he was gone. I scanned the mirror frantically, but the road behind me was empty. My hands trembled as I forced myself to focus, breathing hard as I sped toward the main road. I pulled into the parking lot of a convenience store and leaned my head against the steering wheel. My entire body was shaking, my pulse hammering behind my eyes. This was no human in a costume. Everything I had just witnessed was anything but human. And that's when I realized the security guard back at the warehouse hadn't spotted me that night. She hadn't been the reason I'd felt so on edge. It was Neo and the other figures that had made me feel watched. That must have been why there was a promotional figure missing when I checked again. He'd been looking for me this entire time. He knew I stole from the warehouse. And somehow, the console kept a connection between that thing and my son. I sat there in the dim light of the convenience store. No matter how much I wanted to tell myself it wasn't real, that it was all in my head, I couldn't shake the image of Neo's glitching form from my mind. The console established some kind of link between those digital entities and my home. I had to get rid of it. When I got home, the apartment was quiet save for the soft electronic hum from the living room, where Oliver played with his console. I didn't have the heart to know he was enjoying the very thing I had stolen for him, the very thing I now needed to remove from our lives. I hesitated as I thought about what I had to do. Oliver loved that console more than anything. The joy on his face when I gave it to him had been the whole reason I did what I did. But I couldn't let him be near it for another second. What if Neo came for him the same way he had come for me? Still, knowing what had to be done didn't make doing it any easier. After dinner, I told Oliver it was time for bed. I waited until I heard his bedroom door close, followed by the steady silence as he drifted off to sleep. The apartment was dark as I crept toward the living room. The console sat on the entertainment center, its constellation lights casting a gentle blue glow across the walls. I bent down, careful not to make a sound. The casing was cool and smooth under my fingers as I picked it up. For a moment, I froze as the lights on the console pulsed briefly, almost like a heartbeat. I fought the urge to put it back, reminding myself of Neo's glitching form on the road. I slipped out of the apartment and made my way to the complex's dumpster area, where the large garbage bins sat just outside the back gate. My breath fogged in the cold night air as I stepped outside, clutching the console tightly. The bin loomed ahead of me, and I felt a strange mix of relief and dread as I approached. This was it. I was going to get rid of it, finally sever whatever connection it had to us. Just as I raised the console to toss it in, I froze. Neo was standing at the edge of the parking lot. I couldn't see him clearly, but his form was unmistakable. The cubic head, the circuit patterns glowing blue against his black bodysuit. His silhouette was barely illuminated by the pale light of the security lamps, but I could see him clearly enough. My body locked up, panic surging through me like an electric shock. He raised one arm in slow motion toward me, almost like he was beckoning me to approach. But there was no chance in hell I would go anywhere near that thing. I turned and bolted back inside, slamming the door shut behind me. My heart was racing, my thoughts a jumbled mess. He hadn't attacked me, hadn't chased me, not this time. He just stood there watching me. I leaned against the door, trying to steady my breathing without waking Oliver. The moment replayed in my head over and over again. I hoped that by getting rid of the console, that would end whatever was happening. I locked every door and window in the apartment and checked each room from the safety of the hallway. Everything was clear. It wasn't easy, but eventually I found sleep. The next morning, I woke to the sounds of Oliver moving around in the living room. He was making excited little noises, and my heart broke. He must have been looking for his console, which I had nearly thrown away like garbage. I felt awful and got up, preparing words to try to help him through the disappointment. But as I got closer, the noises weren't of distress, but of excitement. I stepped into the living room, and Oliver was sitting on the floor, the console set up and projecting a holographic game environment around him. The Nexus game sphere was back. No signs of damage from sitting in my hands at the dumpster all night. I quickly wiped away my look of shock, knowing I'd have no way to explain it. I made breakfast quietly with my best forced smile, sent Oliver off to school, and resigned myself to my fate, because I already knew what would happen that day. Neo, appearing everywhere, leering at me from places only I seemed to notice. If there was any doubt that he was only after me, it was wiped away after that day. But one constant had become clear: his raised arm, beckoning me, taunting me, or telling me something. That night, as I thought about everything I'd seen, I started to realize that Neo might not have been pointing at me. Maybe he was pointing at the console I was holding. What if he didn't want me? What if he just wanted the console back? Without giving myself time to second guess, I snuck into the living room and slowly disconnected the Nexus game sphere. I grabbed my car keys and headed out. Neo was nowhere to be found, but I knew where he'd be waiting for me. The drive to the warehouse was a blur, the dark roads rushing past in a haze of fear and determination. When I finally pulled into the lot, the building loomed ahead of me, its shadows stretching across the cracked asphalt like digital tendrils. I stepped out of the car, gripping the console so hard my knuckles ached. The warehouse was just as silent and empty as it had been that night, but now it felt menacing. Taking a deep breath, I pushed through the gap in the fence and made my way inside. This time the cut in the fence was turned facing inward. Intrusive thoughts whispered that this must have been how Neo got in and out. but I pushed them away, focusing on what I was there to do. I entered the warehouse and navigated through the labyrinth of shelves. Neo, Spark, Void, all of them were back in their spots, standing just as they had been the first time I'd seen them. I stepped forward, trembling as I stood in front of them. For a moment, nothing happened, so I spoke up. "I'm sorry," I stammered, my voice shaking more than I was. "I didn't mean to. I didn't think it would. I just wanted to do something nice for my kid." The words tumbled out of me, clumsy and desperate. "He's been doing so well, you know. I just wanted to make him happy, that's all. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone, I swear." I lowered the console slowly, placing it on the cold concrete floor in front of me. "I shouldn't have taken it. I know that now. I'm sorry." My voice cracked as I backed away, my gaze locked on Neo's empty, pixelated eyes. The silence was unbearable, the stillness suffocating. I stood there for a moment longer, waiting for something to happen, but the promotional figures didn't move. They didn't need to. Their presence alone felt like judgment. So I turned and left. I didn't get pursued by anything on the drive home. Oliver was fast asleep in his room, his small body curled up under the covers. The sight of the empty entertainment center made my heart ache. He'd played with that console every afternoon and evening since I'd given it to him. And tomorrow, he'd wake up to find it gone. I stared at his bedroom door for a moment, soaking in the last of this chapter of happiness before it would be ripped away. He was such a good kid. He deserved a father better than I. I'd taken his favorite thing away to protect him, but there was no way he would understand that. When I finally went to bed, I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining Oliver waking up, searching for his console, his bright smile fading when he realized it was gone. I kept telling myself I'd done the right thing, that I'd kept him safe, but it still felt like I'd failed him. At some point, I must have drifted off, because I woke to the sound of Oliver shouting excitedly. I bolted upright, my heart racing as I stumbled out of bed. Adrenaline coursed through me as I rushed to the living room, ready for anything, even the worst. Had Neo returned? Had I been wrong about everything? Oliver was sitting in the middle of the living room floor, surrounded by boxes, an entire digital reality gaming collection. The console was there, along with every game, accessory, and collectible figure from the series. "Dad, how did you do this?" Oliver's grin stretched ear to ear, his eyes sparkling with pure joy. "You got the whole collection for me." I blinked, my brain struggling to catch up. None of this had been here before. I knew that for a fact. I'd taken the console, the only gaming item we had, and left it in the warehouse. But Oliver didn't notice my confusion. He held up one of the game cartridges, fresh out of the box, Digital Reality, Void's Revenge, and hugged it tightly. "I can't believe it. You got every game and all the figures. You're the best dad ever." The only item that wasn't in its original packaging was the console itself. It sat in the center of it all, its constellation lights pulsing steadily like a calm heartbeat. I opened my mouth to say something, but the words didn't come. I wanted to tell him the truth, that I hadn't done this, but the sheer happiness on his face stopped me. Instead, I managed a weak smile. "You deserve it, buddy," I said softly. Oliver beamed, grabbing another item and adding it to his growing setup. His laughter filled the apartment, bright and unrestrained. I backed away quietly, giving him space to enjoy his new treasures. Once in the kitchen, I leaned against the counter, exhaling a shaky breath. I'd returned the stolen console, apologized for taking it, and walked away. Somehow, not only had it come back, but it had brought friends. An entire collection now sat in my living room as though delivered by digital Santa. I shook my head, unwilling to finish the thought. It didn't matter. Oliver was happy. Maybe, just maybe, things were going to be okay. Music. Hello and welcome to Brada Tales. I'm thrilled you've joined us today for another spine-chilling story. Before we dive into today's digital nightmare, I want to thank you for supporting our channel, where we bring you new stories almost every day. Today's tale explores the terrifying consequences when a desperate father crosses a line for his son's happiness. What happens when the digital world starts bleeding into reality? Make sure you're comfortable. This one might have you looking twice at your gaming console. If you enjoy the story, don't forget to hit subscribe and share with friends who appreciate a good scare. Now let's begin.